SPECTRE! Can this movie be defended? Hi, this is Dan.
Tom?
I'm Vicky.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Subscribe now. Okay, today we're going to take apart and tear apart SPECTRE in every way possible to see if this movie can be defended at all. And we welcome back Vicky to co-host our show with us. Yay!
Yay!
Happy to have you back, Vicky.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
All right. The James Bond film SPECTRE 2015 received mixed reviews from both critics and audiences. James Bond fans are vocal, for sure. And on SPECTRE, they were very vocal and still are. There were many criticisms of this movie, though some have praised it as well. But predominantly, you will find it low in the overall satisfaction ranking of James Bond movies. Why so much criticism? And is there anything of value to this James Bond movie? All right, now let's keep in mind, SPECTRE is following Daniel Craig's debut as 007 in the magnificent Casino Royale 2006, then a less than well-received Quantum of Solace, and then a well-received and reviewed Skyfall, and then SPECTRE. Okay, just look at Skyfall. Here's the key. When M delivers the line to the committee that wants to do away with MI6, she quotes Alfred Lord Tennyson from his poem Ulysses.
To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
That should be the mantra of Ian Productions. Yet in SPECTRE, they did not strive, they did not seek, they did not find, but they did yield to something not so great. So let's look at some of what continues them yielding to this stuff. All right.
All right, but first a shout out to some of our listeners who provided feedback to us on some of our podcast episodes.
Oh, that's always good.
It's always good. So we really thank you guys. So big shout out to Jim Phelps, Reno Lovison, Jerry McDonald, Michael Fox, and Sergei Karov.
All right.
Keep the feedback coming in. We really appreciate it. Now,
All
Dan,
right.
before you get on a roll here, you
I'm
make
on a
SPECTRE
roll.
sound like the worst James Bond movie of all time.
No, it's not.
And we all know, at least in my opinion, that distinction goes to Die Another Day.
Oh, you love
And
that
Vicky,
movie.
I know you like that one more than I do. And I'll admit SPECTRE isn't in my top 5 Bond movies, but I'm not sure it's in my bottom 5 either. So I know you want to start talking about the criticisms of this movie. So go ahead, let it roll.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the criticisms. Actually, there's quite a few. All right, we're going to number them too here so we can kind of keep track. Number 1, we're going to cut into it now. The plot, complexity, the pacing issues, and the script. Those are all things that people have said, wow, all right, what's going on? Some viewers found the plot to be convoluted and overly complex, and at times confusing, making it difficult for us to follow this. Some felt that the pacing was uneven and disjointed, and that the narrative lacked coherence and consistency that we saw in many other James Bond films. So it didn't happen here. In fact, it really was trying to wrap up the Daniel Craig era, since we did not know at the time that No Time to Die was going to be coming out. And so it seemed forced at times to make a nice, neat little bundle of what happened in the Craig era. I mean, come on. They even force-fed us that Blofeld was linked with the activities of Bond's antagonists since 2006's Casino Royale, including Le Chiffre, Dominique Green, Raul Silva. Come on! I hate that.
Me. It was all me, James. It's always been me, the author of all your pain.
Oh, my God.
Excuse me, I vomited just a
Oh,
little.
my God. The thought of someone having this much anger and hate for a person because maybe his father showed favoritism to James Bond when he adopted him. Oh, my God. What are they thinking? No, never mind. They were not thinking. It's like,
Yeah, I'll agree with you. That was pretty lame.
Yeah, and I personally have mixed reviews on this film. It certainly is overlong, particularly the second half of the film, and I truly believe Craig should have left the role after this film. I mean, come on.
We agree with
Even
you.
he had the J.B. Mantle sighting. I would rather slit my wrist than do another Bond film.
yeah.
Would we have heard more or Brosnan say anything like that?
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Vicky. Plus, we
Yeah.
have to remember that they'd just gotten back the rights for Spectre. And not surprisingly, I don't think Purvis and Wade had a clue what to do with it. I mean, sorry, there's one. The Daniel Craig arc wasn't written with Spectre in mind, and it shows. They had to try to pigeonhole this convoluted mess
Yeah.
to clean things up, and in my opinion, it doesn't work. And I think, Dan, you want to talk about the arc later, but the arc didn't anticipate Spectre and Blofeld's return, which is one of the reasons arcs are stupid.
Yeah, well, hey, this plot is full of landmines. I mean, Blofeld torturing Bond with the brain drill, which may erase his memory, and then Swann coming up to him during it and saying, "I love you." I mean, talk about a poorly developed scene in this movie. I mean, one misstep like that line, and boom, the whole thing blows up. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I agree with you about the line, but I really did like that brain jail thing.
Oh, the
I mean,
drill is cool.
That was really cool. And I thought they did a great job of making that thing look realistic and very frightening. And I know I wouldn't want that done to me. And if when I go to the dentist, the drill kind of looks the same and it's a little frightening, you know?
Keep it
So-
away from my earlobe.
But then he had this drill enter his head twice.
Yeah.
And he showed zero ill effects from it other than it looked like he was in pain. So
Yeah.
either Blofeld didn't know where to guide the thing, Bond got lucky, or Purvis and Wade didn't know what to do with a disoriented, potentially ruined 007. And I'm guessing on the latter. And yes, the execution of things like the "I love you" line, that whole thing
Ugh.
wasn't great. But I think the drill worked. I think it fit in a Bond film,
Yeah. I have no
except
problem
it
with the drill.
didn't do any damage to 007.
Yeah.
And you also have to love James Bond with a gadget watch. Although it was pretty lame how it blew up, that fit like a Bond gadget. So, you know, there's parts of this scene I actually liked, but that whole "I love you" thing just was like, what the heck?
Hey, that was weak. Weak. Speaking of blowing up, remember the great explosion of Blofeld's lair? I mean, we spoke with Chris Corbold about this scene. He was the special effects guru that did it. And at the time, this explosion was in Guinness as the largest explosion on screen. I mean, come on, you're Blofeld. This powerful genius you are, Blofeld. And you've designed a lair that if one thing goes wrong, the entire place blows up into smithereens. I mean, come on, even submarines have protective hatch doors to close from one area from another. I mean, what do you think? But not Blofeld's lair. No. And as I've said, Swann and Bond standing there watching this huge explosion happening in front of them. I mean, they hardly even flinched. And it seems like this that tear apart this storyline. They just, yikes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, but you would think they would be hightailing it out of there. I mean, it
Yeah.
stopped to turn around. They don't know how big this thing's gonna get, right? So
Might be coming at them.
maybe as you're running, you turn back once when the explosion starts, but they shouldn't have just been standing there saying, "Let's go home." I mean, yeah, it was a cool explosion, but
Yeah,
I don't think they
it's
should have
not
been
over
standing there
yet.
watching it.
Yeah, oh man. Personally, so many people speak of this Daniel Craig arc in the James Bond series, and I have to say, I hate that talk. I really, really do.
Well, Dan, I hate the arc, but Dan, we did an episode with Eddie from Montreal, Canada, about
Yeah.
that very topic before No Time to Die was even released. So what's changed for you?
James Bond arc, yeah, I'm good with a James Bond arc. A Daniel Craig arc, no. I'm gonna talk about that. Yeah, Casino Royale, the rights to which Ian production got late, was a fantastic movie, and this arc thing to me is an irk thing to me, not an arc thing. It's an irk thing. We see in the Craig era Bond getting his 007 license, growing old quickly, retiring, and then dying. All in 5 movies. I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. I'm against it. I hate that. That alone irks me. His James Bond is not an arc whose storyline we must now ignore because it fits nowhere with the James Bond franchise or the James Bond agent development that we've been seeing all along. So this makes Spectre even more suspect for James Bond fans. They force-fed us a wrap-up of all the Craig stuff. It was Daniel Craig's idea, they say, when he came on for Casino, to have Bond die when he was finished. But then Spectre was going to be his last movie. So, dream unfulfilled. I'll come back for one more. Anyway, Spectre takes a beating, and partly because of this irking arc concept.
Yes, but the arc does seem to be a common film process nowadays for many characters. So Marvel's Tony Stark goes from selfish to selfless. Bella Swan in the Twilight Saga, weak and powerless to strong and powerful. Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings trilogy, zero to hero, even if he is a little underrated. And of course, the John Wick films.
Yeah, that's true. Those are good points. I still don't like it, but
Well, it may be one of the reasons why I don't watch Marvel movies, because I don't like that arc, the whole superhuman things they can do.
yeah.
So, the arcs are a problem.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Let's get on to character development. Number 2 for us in some criticism of this movie. Often a criticism of Bond movies is the character development. So this is nothing new. Critics argue that certain characters lack depth and development, making it more challenging for the audience to really just connect with them. You could say that pretty much about any movie, because you got an hour and a half, you got 2 hours, or some Bond films, you got millions of hours like this one. Too long. This may be true. Personally, Madeleine Swann, for one, is rather flat, uninspired, questionable as to how she could have won Bond over so quickly, or even if she wanted to in the first place. Really, there really is no development. It is a flat, transparent sheet of glass that we can see right through with her. I hate that. Really, Bond falls in love with Madeleine Swann, with the character we saw on screen. Okay, I suppose anything can happen in love, but wow, no. That character development, there was none.
But now we have seen Bond women for many decades. We saw Tracy on Her Majesty's Secret
Yeah,
Service. We
good
saw
ones.
That's Berlin and Casino, and Bond falls for them. However, I'd agree it's a leap for many of us Bond fans to see Bond go all gaga over Swan. To me, she was emotionally bankrupt. She doesn't seem to have anything emotionally to play with. Again, not a surprise with Purvis and Wade writing the screenplay. And
Ooh,
to
that's number 3.
That's number 3. Okay. And to me, she doesn't show anything in her personality that I'd want to see again, especially not the next movie. Now, one character who I thought was well developed was Lucia. She was played by Monica Bellucci. Now, she had a very small part, but other than the pre-title sequence, that scene with her and Bond is my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, she doesn't have many words, but you learned what you needed to know about her. And I'm glad they finally were able to get her into a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
And I talk bad about Purvis and Wade, but this scene I think had the best writing in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Bellucci's acting drove it home. I
Yeah.
love the banter those two had. To me, it was a great scene and great character development, surprisingly.
Yeah, and it sets us up for the rest of the film too, which is great. So this particular criticism of character development is legitimate, unless this is the character they wanted to develop. Then they chose to develop a poor one. Choose wisely, as they said in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And come on, Ian.
I'm not a fan of Swan, and that's one of the negative things about the film for me. Although I do think she was more interesting in No Time to Die. She had more rounded edges and a bit more personality, but only a little bit. But you're right, out of all the women Bond could have picked, he chose the nondescript one. Surely Bond would pick someone who challenges him, keeps him on his toes, like Tracy from On Her Majesty's, or Vesper, as Dan has rightly said. Writers were certainly clutching at straws and already moving Bond away from the figure that we recognise as fans.
Yeah.
Good old Purvis and Wade.
That's the part that drives you crazy.
4.
That's number 4 for Tom on Purvis and Wade. Hey, let's look at Blofeld too. We have seen him before in Bond movies, and we have not seen him totally in other Bond movies, and some not at all. But here, Blofeld, with the subplot twist of he and Bond being foster brothers because his parents adopted Bond when Bond's parents were killed. Well, that is a part of his character development that most people would label to be a poor piece of character development. It was rather a character destruction. No one buys into this plot line. Really, who thought of this? And then who thought it was a good idea?
Yeah, who approved it?
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I just don't buy it. The foster brother twist wasn't really a twist, as many of us already saw it coming so early on in the film. Perhaps the writers thought that getting an Oscar-winning actor to play Blofeld would save the sloppy narrative, but unfortunately, it didn't.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Tom. Here's your 5th opportunity to bash Purvis and Wade. Vicky mentioned writers.
Okay. So I'm going to surprise you here a little bit. I
Ooh.
absolutely believe this was a lame plot twist. But and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it does have at least some roots in Ian Fleming's writings. So in the short story Octopussy, there was a character named Hans Oberhauser who was a ski instructor and who was killed by Dexter Smythe, who was Octopussy's father. And in that story, Bond tells Smythe, it just happened that Oberhauser was a friend of mine. He taught me to ski before the war when I was in my teens. He was a wonderful man. He was something of a father to me at a time when I happened to need one. So he didn't say he was a father or he was an adopted father, but he said he was something of one.
Okay.
So what they did to this plot point, I think, wasn't great. I think they were trying to figure out how to do this callback back to Fleming's original words. I just think this foster brother way wasn't the way to do it for this movie. There's so many other things they could have done when they got to bring back Blofeld. And it was really disappointing how they did it. Especially, they thought this would likely be Craig's last turn as Bond. In fact, in my opinion, if they had just brought the Blofeld character back, they didn't need to add a backstory, except they've forgotten everything about Bond's history.
Yeah.
Right? So you didn't need to give him this backstory. And I think Spectre would have been much better without it if Blofeld was just back being Blofeld.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the problems with how they handled the whole Craig era. They ignored parts of his past, but brought others back. And this one they could have brought back without the need to embellish. And I think it would have been a lot stronger because everybody knows Blofeld wants to kill Bond.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
We know that. That's part of his background. We know it already. All right. Let's get on to our third point. Anytime you come up with a James Bond film, you're going to be comparing it to other previous Bond films. That's the way it is. Spectre faced comparisons to its predecessor, Skyfall, which received widespread acclaim. This made it challenging for the film to live up to the high expectations that was set by this previous Bond film, Skyfall. Of course, there are those who do not like Skyfall much either, and the Bond universe is immense, so there's opinions every which way you can go, all over the map. A View to a Kill is considered by many the worst Roger Moore Bond movie, and yet there are those who adore this movie as well. But Skyfall grossed 1.1 billion, so not so bad. And Spectre followed that record-breaking box office performance and tried to compete with that. That's a tough hill to climb. So everyone has their top list of movies, of Bond movies, and they move around all the time. I've got mine, you've got yours. But man, generally, we have a handful of them that are usually on the bottom of the list, and that's things like A View to a Kill, Diamonds Are Forever, Die Another Day, Tom's favorite, Quantum of Solace, and Spectre.
But don't forget No Time to Die, Dan. I would watch Diamonds Are Forever and A View to a Kill over No Time to Die any day. And Spectre sits low mid-table for me.
I agree. I would too. I'm with you on that one, Vicky.
Yeah, me too. I think that No Time to Die. I have not watched that
No.
except when we're going to do an episode on it.
Yeah.
All right. It just, but it might have been because I watched it 6 times when it came out to see the different formats. But this is also how Bond movies tend to work. You think about that list you just talked about. A View to a Kill was preceded by Octopussy, and it didn't perform as well in the box office as its predecessor. Diamonds followed on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, in this case, it did beat Majesty's at the box office, but in more recent times, Majesty's has taken on a higher view than what Diamonds did. Now, Die Another Day was preceded by The World Is Not Enough, and I have no idea how it had a higher box office than The World Is Not Enough. The World Is Not Enough, in my opinion, was a much better movie.
Agree.
And then we get Quantum following Casino Royale, and it didn't have the benefit of an Ian Fleming novel behind it. Plus, that movie had to deal with the writer's strike. And then we get Skyfall, followed by Spectre. So it seems like they get a good one out, and then they don't necessarily follow it with a good one.
Yeah, but Quantum of Solace was a Fleming short story, though. But it had nothing to do with the movie, though. So, yeah, there you go.
I mean, even The Man with the Golden Gun, which didn't have a great box office, followed Live and Let Die, which had a decent box office. Yep. And I personally like both of these movies, but you'll hear more people discounting The Man with the Golden Gun than Live and Let Die, except for the blaxploitation stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to our fourth point. The villain's motivation. You know, we always look for villains. We always look for great villains in Bond movies. Okay, so And the motivation behind the villain is really the key. What drives this villain? What drives Blofeld? What drives all these guys? Drax, everybody. The motivations of the main antagonist here, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, played by Christoph Waltz, it raises a flag for many. The concept of Blofeld and his anger towards Bond because Blofeld was jealous. Like we said, his real father seemed to be liking the adopted James Bond better, as we mentioned. I mean, that entire aspect of the plot and the backstory now that we're stuck with did not resonate with the Bond community, and that Blofeld killed his father over it and then changed his own name from Franz Oberhauser to Ernst Stavro Blofeld and dedicated his life to causing Bond pain.
If you have to describe it in that many words, it sucks.
It
Yeah.
sucks. It seems over the top, unnecessary. And many feel that this one aspect of the plot, this character development, lack of it, an interrelationship between Blofeld and Bond from their younger years was totally unnecessary, outrageous, unbelievable. I must say, I like Christoph Waltz as Blofeld. I don't mind him at all. But I have to agree with the critics. This is the weakest part of the entire movie and plotline, and in many ways ruins the movie for so many and the whole concept of Blofeld, really. It's cheap. It taints the movie, and it's difficult to dismiss this in any type of defense of this movie.
Yeah, Blofeld is such an iconic character within the Bond franchise. I mean,
Yeah.
Donald Pleasant's version is my absolute favourite in You Only Live Twice. That it creates a weak connection to Bond presented in Spectre, and it dulls the character. Why does everything have to be presented in a package with a big dynamic bow?
Yeah.
Did he really need to be linked to all of Bond's misery?
All right, I've got nothing to add on that one. I think you said it well. Well, hang on. Maybe I do. All right. I always seem to have something to say. I don't know how the writers screwed this up so badly. They finally got the opportunity to bring Blofeld back, and they lay this stupid backstory on him. It was totally unnecessary. Just show him as Blofeld with the white cat, all would be well. Blofeld would want to kill Bond due to what happened in the earlier Bond movies before they lost the rights. Oh, wait a minute. With Daniel Craig, they erased most of the 44 years of Bond history. Well, sort of. They really did make a mess of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that dang arc thing again.
Yeah, and it's sad because the rest of the plot kind of worked. But the Blofeld but the Blofeld backstory and trying to tie up the Daniel Craig arc really messed up the Blofeld character to Bond fans. And now they've killed him off in No Time to Die. And so getting him back doesn't no good.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to our fifth point that's negative. It's too long. Many viewers have said it's too long. With a runtime of over 2.5 hours, which could have contributed to the pacing issues and the flow of the storyline to what degree there was one, and also to the action and to the plot. Yeah, maybe they are right on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, imagine what they left on the cutting room floor.
Oh my God.
Plus, it had to be long because they had to try to tie everything up, as Vicky, you said, in a nice little bow for the overall arc of the Craig set of movies. They somehow had plenty of them to deal with, though, in No Time to Die. So they didn't even tie them all up in Spectre.
Yeah, sometimes long movies are fine, right? If they're done to perfection and the pace flows well. You've got tons of examples. The Godfather, 1972, it's almost 3 hours long. The Godfather Part 2, you got Saving Private Ryan, you got Braveheart, Shawshank Redemption, Lord of the Rings. You got some great, great movies that are longer than this movie, but much better than this movie. So it's been successfully done.
Yeah, and I'm all for a long movie, providing that the storyline is captivating and interesting enough. And most of Kevin Costner's filmic back catalogue is over 3 hours long.
Huh?
If you're going to make it epic, make sure it's epic.
That's a great way of putting it. That should be all we can say. Boom.
Yeah,
that sums it all up, Vicky.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
All right, let's look at another one, predictability. Some people said, hey, certain plot points were predictable and it diminished the impact of the key moments in the story. Well, really?
Yeah, okay, let's look at some of these. So M tells Bond he's being ordered to stand down immediately. We knew that wasn't going to work. That was predictable. Bond wouldn't listen.
We've heard that before.
Yeah. When Q tells Bond that the alarm on his watch was rather loud, we knew we'd see what he did with it.
Yeah.
So it's like Moneypenny's response after the door closes when M asks her, it's not your birthday today, is it? Again, that was extremely predictable. Oh, it was 2 days ago or whatever it was. I mean, the car chase with Hinks had a very predictable Bond ending with him losing the car. Of course, we
Okay.
didn't know how he was going to lose it, but you knew it was going to crash.
Sounds like these critics might be right.
Yeah, and you knew something bad was going to happen to C just because he was such an obnoxious jerk. You just didn't know how it would happen. And I think one thing that I'm not sure if was totally predictable or not was Bond not shooting Blofeld on the bridge. And it's only predictable if you think about M's line to C when M asked if C had ever had to kill a man.
Have you ever had to kill a man, Max? Have you? To pull that trigger, you have to be sure. Yes, you investigate, analyze, assess, target, and then you have to look him in the eye, and you make the call. And all the drones, bugs, cameras, transcripts, all the surveillance in the world can't tell you what to do next. A license to kill is also a license not to kill.
A license to kill is also a license not to kill. I mean, when I heard that line, I was wondering who Bond was not going to kill, and then ends up being Blofeld.
All right.
Yeah, and Q's ability to stop the database from going online until just before it was supposed to. Oh, yawn. Same thing with Bond getting out before the 3-minute countdown timer. Again, yawn.
All right. So, okay. It sounds like the critics here were correct. There's some bashing going on here because of the predictability. But I have to say, I was surprised a couple of times in the movie. No one, for instance, no one in the right mind could have predicted that Bond and Blofeld were foster brothers. So there you go. There was
We
a
couldn't think
surprise.
anybody would come up with anything that's stupid.
Exactly. All right. So there are parts of Spectre that we like and we do find entertaining in ways. Not the ways that we just mentioned right now, but there are some ways. And some of this are just the way Ian Production does Bond movies. The production value, for instance. Man, fantastic. Again, in the tradition of Ian Productions James Bond movies, they do leave it all on the screen. So many people who criticize this movie also praise it for its high production values. The cinematography is first rate. The action sequences are thrilling and well executed. And for the most part, it adds to the value of the movie and fits in with the thematic elements of the movie. Just in general, there is a overall visual appeal to the movie that's hard to deny. That is positive.
Yeah, you cannot fault the pre-title sequence, which I believe to be one of the best in the franchise. As a viewer, you really find yourself amongst the action in the Day of the Dead Mexican celebrations. It's intriguing, surprising, and spectacular all in one. Shame the rest of the film couldn't have been as thrilling.
Amen.
Yeah, it went downhill after that. All right, this was the usual thing. Great production value. So we cannot criticize the movie at all for this. And really, the pre-title, as you said, Vicky, one of the best in the Bond series. Really fantastic. So what can Spectre say? Hey, maybe what Bill Murray said in Caddyshack.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
All right, so yes, the production values are top shelf, regardless of how bad the writing was. And you do have to admire the amount of time planning and the money that they do put into Bond movies. They do try to get it right. And from a production-wise, I agree with you. They absolutely do. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Amazon owning Bond now. How that money and production value, are they going to be able to keep it to the same standard?
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to Saltzman and Broccoli doing this in the beginning with Dr. No. Put it all on the screen. That's what they want to do. All right, let's look at the cinematography. We mentioned cinematography. This film's visual style at the hands of cinematographer Hoyte van Hoytema was appealing and in general widely praised. We have typical James Bond stunning locations, beautifully shot sequences from the opening Day of the Dead parade we mentioned in Mexico City to the scenic landscapes of Austria and Morocco. This is well done. As in most James Bond movies, we have come to expect it because a lot of money goes into maintaining this vision, and they still do it, which is great.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about that Day of the Dead scene or the scenes in Austria, those reminded me of Peace Gloria and the gondolas, right? There was even a gondola scene, which, brings us back to Peace Gloria and some of the other Bond movies, and even how they filmed Blofeld's lair. I mean, it was all done fantastically.
Yeah.
Part of what I think too is that the way they lighted the interior scenes was fantastic. It's not just the cinematography, but the lighting comes into play, especially on those interior scenes.
Yeah, he also did cinematography for Dunkirk. All right, let's look at another positive, the score and the soundtrack. I mean, Thomas Newman's score was generally well received and contributed in developing and enhancing the atmosphere and the tension of the movie. Now, many have issues with Sam Smith's theme song, Writings on the Wall. I happen to like it. And hey, it won an Academy Award for Best Original Song, so it's got that going for it. So,
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy the theme song. But I have to say, for those of you who haven't heard Matt from Cue the Music, a Bond community band directed by Warren Ringham, sing this song at one of their spectacular shows, then it is a must. It is far superior than Smith's version, and every time I hear him sing it, he gets a 5-minute standing ovation.
wow.
Now I
That's
might
cool.
like it then, because I'm going to disagree with you guys on this song. I hate this song, and it might be the performance of it, right? I mean, it doesn't feel like a Bond theme song to me. To me, it's one of those title sequences I always skip over. Some of them I watch, and some of them I just skip over. And this one, I just blast past it. And it's because of the song. And it's too bad, because they actually did a good job with the title sequence and with the graphics on it. Now, the rest of the score I do like. And there's that
Yes.
underlying percussive music under the action sequences. There's that. And it's not loud, it's just there. And it's what a good score should do. It brings you into the movie. It had a bit more of a Bourne movie feel to it with the way they scored it. Now, to me, if they had just used a different theme song, I'd be good.
Okay. All right, let's look at another positive, action. All right, we love action in Bond movies. That's what we're used to. We want to see more of it. There were many very solid action sequences in Spectre, including, as we said, the pre-titles Mexico City action. That was fantastic. The car chase in Rome was solid, with some great lines delivered by Bond, too. I like that.
Dan, I don't agree with the car chase. Now, I love a good car chase, and Bond has had so many exhilarating chases across the franchise. But for me, the Rome chase is a big letdown. It
Okay.
just seems to be there. Oh, we need to put a car chase in. And it isn't even that interesting, despite the sexy location.
All right, I see what you're saying. At some point during it, I was thinking that Rome is just a backdrop, and it's like, oh, we got to do this in Rome. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But how about the plane and car chase in the Austrian Alps? That was a highlight as well, I thought. And so we got some typical James Bondian production value there out of some of the action sequences, maybe not all of them, like I said. And that's another positive. And we had some gadgets and some exotic locales, so all that's good.
Yeah, and I agree with you with the action here in Spectre. And you talked about the Austrian Alps. When they did that plane crash through the building, think in your mind of the jet flying through the building in Octopussy. In Octopussy, it flies through and it escapes unscathed. And that was a pretty cool stunt. But I think this crashing through the building, has a more realistic feel to me. And it was a cool stunt. I mean, it was a cool stunt in Octopussy, but I think this stunt felt more realistic. And the locations I thought were also highlighted very well. And
Yeah.
Dan, we need to go to all of these locations.
Yeah, let's go. All right, we got to go, folks. We're getting out of here. All right, let's look at Daniel Craig now. Okay, all right. All right, we're going to look
Wait,
at Daniel
this is the
Craig's
positive, Dan.
performance.
This is the positive section of this episode.
Yeah, look, Daniel Craig's portrayal of James Bond, for me, it was pretty good. Inspector, he did receive positive reviews, really. So he has been solid, I thought, from Casino Royale was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic in Casino Royale. Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, I thought he was good. So many Bond fans appreciate his continued commitment to the role, and he did bring an emotional depth and a real world element to the character, which we didn't see all that much before. He bled, he was tortured, he was beaten up, he was injured. He was not invincible. And Craig played this off tremendously well, I thought. As a Bond actor, I think he was one of the better ones. He brought a new dimension to the character, and in a positive way. We saw sides of Bond we hadn't seen before, and we saw Bond as a human being, not a hero. Fleming did not think Bond was a hero type, and that was refreshing. And Inspector, he was just as good as in the previous ones, I thought. 4 Bond outings, still Casino Royale, of course, to me is his best overall movie, but his performance is solid in them all. The arc thing, though,
Yeah, Casino is my favourite Craig film too, but I hasten to say Craig is my least favourite Bond actor.
Wow.
Which, yeah, he just lacked a little bit of joyous fun for me, which many of the other actors brought. And I really hope that we get that back when they finally bring Bond back.
Yeah, if they do, when they do, if they do one. All right, yeah, okay, that doesn't bother me, him not being so joyous. What about Dalton? Timothy Dalton, he wasn't too sure. Is he on the bottom of your list there too, Vicky?
Yes.
There was a spark to Dalton that you don't get out of him. And I'm
Okay,
totally
all right.
I'm totally disagreeing with you on this one, Dan. I really liked Craig's portrayal a lot in Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
But in every movie since
We all
then,
agree.
and I thought he changed the character for the worse versus the previous movie. And I don't like how they changed it. He may have been closer to Bond in the books as Timothy Dalton, but his strength was looking beaten up. Again, I loved him in Casino Royale, but by Spectre, to me, he'd run his course.
Okay, all right.
Just bear in mind that in Quantum of Solace, he was more like Steve McQueen than James Bond.
Hey, that's a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked Steve McQueen.
Yeah, I do as well, but yeah.
But he wouldn't have been a good Bond, I don't think, Steve McQueen. All right, let's get off of Craig then and look at the supporting cast then, the cast, all the other actors around him. That's pretty good. The supporting cast, basically the regulars, including Ralph Fiennes as M, Ben Whishaw as Q, Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. They were great as usual, I thought. Léa Seydoux as Dr. Madeleine Swann. She received some positive mentions. I don't know how, but for me, no. But I think Jesper Christensen as Mr. White was outstanding. I mean,
Yeah.
he was fabulous, I thought.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Andrew Scott, who played Max Denby in the film, or C as he was known. He's always a very versatile actor, playing crazed madmen, a corrupt member of the British government, a sexy priest, a swindler. The list goes on. He's a top-class actor.
Yeah, he was actually Moriarty in the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock series. Yeah. He was fantastic in that as well. Yeah, he's good. That was a good call.
And I agree with you totally on the supporting cast and Jesper Christensen. Now, for me, the supporting cast is better than Daniel Craig and Léa Seydoux combined. Seydoux just doesn't work for me as a James Bond love interest in this movie. I liked Chris Vals's performance. It was good, but it was different feeling Blofeld. But that's fine because Blofeld did change based on who the character playing him was.
Yeah.
I think that Christoph suffered some of the worst parts of the script. He's a very strong actor. He tried to shine even despite how his parts were written. And I'm going to miss Ben Whishaw's Q most of all, assuming they don't bring him back. It's hard to replace the legend, as the Bond actors have found out. And Desmond Llewellyn was spectacular as Q.
Yes.
But I think the modernization of the character here was spot on. And Whishaw delivered this new style Q, I thought, extremely well. I've already mentioned Monica Bellucci and how much I liked her. I thought Dave Bautista as Hinks, that was a really good henchman. Yeah. He did a great job there. I agree with you, Vicky, on Andrew Scott. He's great at playing an obnoxious jerk. Mm-hmm. And even some of the smaller roles, like Alessandro Cremona's portrayal of Marco Sciarra and Brigitte Millar's performance as Vogel, they were well done. They help support the movie, which is the role of a supporting cast. So top shelf on the supporting cast here. Just the 2 stars we could have done without.
All right. We mentioned another positive, the spectacular opening sequence. I don't think we have to say anything more about that. It was spectacular, the whole Day of the Dead parade and all that stuff. We knew that it was the Day of the Dead. We knew somebody had to die. So that was a great thing. And we loved it. So that part was fantastic. Let's get to another positive, the set pieces. Okay, we don't have Ken Adams stuff here, but Blofeld's Desert Lair was an impressive set piece. The production design by Dennis Gassner received accolades for its creativity and attention to detail. The Spectre meeting room, too, was impressive. You mentioned Brigitte Millar. She was in that meeting. I thought that was a great scene and brought you kind of into it, which was terrific.
Yeah, the Spectre meeting room is one of my favourite scenes in the film. It's a real homage to the old Bond films. A long table filled with Spectre agents, atmospheric lighting to add to the tension of the scene. The good old who round the table is going to get wiped out scenario. And talking of that, that's a moment that I can't watch.
Yeah, Yeah, that Guerra kill by Hinks is hard to watch.
Mm,
But it is
Yeah.
quite effective.
it is,
Um,
yeah.
And I think there is more to the set pieces than just Blofeld's lair in the meeting room. Yeah, those were fantastic, but I like the Q Lab, the new design there, and the new HQ.
Yeah, that's good.
American, where Bond meets Swan. I thought that was a very
Oh
neat.
yeah, that was great. That was
Right?
great.
I mean, even the room that Bond tries to shoot Blofeld, but the bulletproof glass stops the shot. I thought that was it's a small set, but I thought that was an interesting set piece for that. And I think the sets absolutely add to the quality of the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Those are good ones. Good call outs. All right, let's get to another one. And I like this. It does pay homage to previous Bond movies. This I like a lot about Spectre. And we are always looking for connections to previous Bond movies and to the storyline of Bond, not Craig. And so we have some here. So throughout Spectre, there are numerous references to events and characters, certainly from the earlier Daniel Craig films, as we mentioned, trying to tie together the narrative arc that began with Casino Royale. This includes references to Vesper Lynn, Silva, and other characters we mentioned. And so while I do not like the arc concept, I do like that there are references in Bond movies to other Bond missions and events so that we feel that we're part of the story and there is a history to Bond and the character we've come to know and love. I
Yeah,
like
but
that
they
part.
forget about that with Blofeld. And there's no Tracy stuff. I mean,
Yeah, there's no
except
Tracy.
I guess the history of the octopus short story, maybe. But then they did that stupid embellishment. Plus, I think these references were as frequent as they were because they thought this was going to be Craig's last turn as Bond.
Yeah.
They had, and again, somehow they had even more in No Time to Die. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, specifically here, though, there's a nice call out to Honor Majesty's Secret Service with the relationship between Bond and Madeleine Swann, which, of course, mirrors the relationship with Bond and Tracy and Honor Majesty's Secret Service, and
It
where he falls
doesn't
in
mirror
love.
it at all. The one with Tracy was so much better.
Oh, it is a lot much better. It's a
Oh.
much better movie. It's a fabulous movie, really. But I like that it kind of mirrors those things that happen in Bond's past before Craig, and that it brings us full circle with some of the things we've learned about Bond over our years and decades of watching the movie. So that part I like.
Of course, the return of Blofeld and Spectre, the reintroduction of Ernst Stavro Blofeld, here played by Christoph Waltz, is a certain nod to classic Bond films as one of Bond's most iconic adversaries. Having appeared in several earlier films, such as From Russia with Love, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Diamonds Are Forever, and the Spectre Organisation, Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge and Extortion, is critically a central element in many of the early Bond films. What I like is that its return here in Spectre ties the Daniel Craig era back to the roots of Bond's cinematic franchise adversaries, recalling its presence in films like Doctor No, Thunderball, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I like that this tie is present here. It goes beyond the Daniel Craig irk arc.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
we have gadgets again. The DB10 in particular is cool and reminds us of the Goldfinger era.
Yeah, and like we said, the Day of the Dead pre-title, it's one of the best, and it reminds us of some great ones from the past Bond movies like Goldfinger and The Spy Who Loved Me,
Fantastic.
of really top shelf pre-titles.
Yeah, and we got a train fight scene here too,
Well, it's a spy
which was
movie.
good,
You
right?
have to.
A definite nod to Inspector with a brutal train fight scene here between Hanks and Bond. We obviously look back to From Russia with Love with Bond and Grant, which was the greatest train fight scene ever filmed, probably.
Yeah, and there was one little
Fabulous.
thing they did in that fight that I loved, and it's the way they use those barrels to get Hinks off the train. And it kind of, the way it kind of spun out reminded me of the barrels in From Russia with Love as they're going off the back of the boat, the
Okay.
barrels of oil. So that was a
Well-
nice, subtle little callback that I liked.
When you say barrels, the first thing that always comes to mind with barrels is Jaws, those yellow barrels that they
Yes.
attach to the shark to pop up. That's what I always think about when you say barrels.
You know, I'm talking about the oil barrels they had go off the back of the boat and From Russia with Love. That it kind of had that feeling to me.
Yeah. And we mentioned the meeting room and how good that was here in the Spectre movie. And that's a callback, like we mentioned, to Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and other Bond movies too. The secretive global villainous network that's powerful. I like that. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sound during this scene it's got this reverb and this airiness to it. I thought it really enhances the scene a lot. Now, the execution here I thought was a step above Thunderball and You Only Live Twice meeting rooms. And I think this was just a really good meeting scene.
Yes.
And
Fabulous.
Blofeld's lair in Spectre, the desert headquarters that is in a meteor crater,
Mhm.
it reminds me of the lavish lairs in Dr. No, The Spy Who Loved Me, You Only Live Twice. I mean, it's really a hallmark of Bond enemies in the movies.
Yeah.
And this is fantastic here.
Yeah, good. That's great. And lastly, we got the gun barrel sequence. Yeah. Spectre opens with the traditional gun barrel sequence, which had been altered or placed differently in the previous Craig movies. This return to the classic opening is yet another nod to the traditional Bond film structure, which we like again. Beyond Craig. Yes. Okay. I think we've torn this thing apart and we've done everything we could. Is Spectre defensible? There are about as many negatives as positives about this movie, and some of the negatives are not defensible at all. At all, at all, at all. What do you think, folks? Oh, I don't know. This has been Dan.
Tom?
And Vicky.
The SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Help us reach more people. Subscribe to our show right now and be in the know. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks.